Hey, hi. Again, thank you for having me. I'm Bhavesh Patel, Associate Research Professor at the California Medical Innovations Institute. My background is in computational modeling, so finite element model, finite difference models, and so on. But about 4 years ago, I kind of got into FAIR data practices and transitioned into that. Even started a new division at the Institute called the FAIR Data Innovations Hub, where I have a team of software developers mainly who are working on different tools that helps researchers make their data and other research outcomes fair. And as part of this effort, we worked on those guidelines called the FAIR-BioRS guidelines I'm going to talk about today. And so this work started as part of a project funded by the NIAID, which is leading the COVID-19 effort here in the United States. And we came across the need to answer the following questions around September 2021, how to make biomedical research software findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And so this was motivated by several reports that stated that while the findings of COVID-19 related research efforts are rapidly and very broadly published through preprint or manuscript, the associated code and software are not always easy to find. And then when found, they're not always easily reusable, which was affecting the reproducibility of the findings that were published. And so what we did, we reviewed literature about FAIR, especially in relation to research software. And we started with the FAIR guiding principle, the original principle published in 2016. They were designed to make all digital research objects optimally reusable. So technically, they also applied to research software, but many deemed them not completely suitable for research software. So there was many effort to reformulate those principles for research software, and eventually all those efforts came together under the umbrella of the RDA FAIR-4RS working group, which established reformulated FAIR principles that are tailored for research software, called the FAIR principle for research software, or the FAIR-4RS principle. And so when we started our work, they had just published a draft version around June 2021. And then later on, they published what they call version 1 in, I believe, March 2022. And so when we came across that, we were like, okay, our work is done here. They are the FAIR principle for research software. So we just have to follow them to make a biomedical research software fair. But it turns out it wasn't that simple, because the FAIR-4RS principles are aspirational by design, and they do not provide clear, actionable guidelines. Which was challenging mainly for someone like me who's not trained in software development or software engineering. I believe most of the people developing software for biomedical research are, in my situation, researchers who are developing code here and there as the need come up for their research, but not really trained to do that. And so I was like, well, let's kind of push this work then a little further and really try to establish some minimal actionable guideline for making biomedical research software compliant with the FAIR-4RS principle. So basically, I just wanted something that say do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and very clearly state what to do, be very specific, and then you'll be compliant with the FAIR-4RS principle. And so to establish those guidelines, again, because the original person with me who started, we didn't have a kind of a training in software development engineering. We started very basic and did this work in several steps. And so first we read all the different publications that came out of the FAIR-4RS working group to really understand what each of the 17 FAIR-4RS principles were requiring. So we derived some instruction for each of the principles. They were not yet very specific, but we tried to combine as much information as we could find in those different publications. And then we found that there were similar themes across those instructions and principles, such as metadata, repository, registry, and so on. So we regrouped those instructions into 5 categories, and then did some literature review to see what was suggested to do or suggested as a best practice or standard for each of those instructions and categories. And eventually we reorganized those when we had some guidelines, very specific guidelines, reorganized them into a software development chronology. So then anyone can follow from beginning as they start developing their software until they're ready for release, and then along the way comply with the FAIR-RS principles. And that gave birth to the FAIR-BioRS guidelines. And just to give you a little bit of chronology, we started this effort in December 2021, published a preprint about our first version of the guideline around June, and at the same time submitted this for peer-reviewed publication in Scientific Data, presented this work later on at the BOSC 2022, so the Biomedical Open Source Conference, which was really great in terms of getting feedback and inputs. And in September last year, we received comments back from reviewer and have been working on version 2.0 to address the reviewer comments, but also feedback we got at BOSC. And mainly, for instance, when we started working with the draft FAIR-RS principle. And then now we are updating that to align with the version 1 of the FAIR-RS principle. We are updating our literature review to be more relevant, and again, addressing also different comments that we got. So enough teasing now, maybe I can move on to the principles. And I'm gonna go on the repository here because it'll be very difficult to fit that in the slides, but here is the draft version 2.0. I'm presenting the draft version because it's evolved a lot since the version 1. Almost a little ashamed of what we did as version 1 until we got, again, great feedback at BOSC and from the reviewers and other input as we started talking about this effort. But basically, each of those guidelines are supposed to help fulfill one or multiple of the FAIR-RS principles. And they're all based on literature review and then feedback and some of the understanding and knowledge that we had as we've been developing also biomedical research software. And so it starts with kind of following some steps before the development, such as working from choosing a version control system platform, including or choosing a license file, and a little bit of recommendation for people like me who have no knowledge or really clear understanding of what software licenses are and some resources they can use to help with that. And then during development of the software, follow some other standards and best practice, such as include some comment in your code, record dependencies, follow language-specific standards, and ensuring the input and output of the software kind of follow some community standards. And again, having some very specific mention of what should be followed or where more additional information can be found. And we also provide some recommendation on documentation for people who don't really know what to document and really specify the minimum information that's required to, again, satisfy the different FAIR principles, FAIR-RS principles that mention about having information about provenance of the software, how to cite the software, and so on. And then we mentioned some metadata files that can be included. And again, this was mentioned earlier. So throughout the literature, there were two majorly mentioned, code meta.json and citation.cff. We couldn't really make a choice, I guess, onto, hey, which one to recommend, even though they have overlapping themes and so on. And we felt that it was so for, at least for now, okay to recommend to include both, as one was a little bit more, I would say, machine friendly, and the other one a little bit more human friendly and had different purposes and use. And we also mentioned the minimum field that should be provided in both, again, to satisfy the requirement of the FAIR-RS principle. And of course, you can always provide more information. And finally, we suggest to archive the software, not leave it on GitHub, but on a dedicated repository, on a language-specific or field-specific repository. And we recommend few, but definitely share it on Zenodo or Figshare, which were, again, the two platforms that they came across the most commonly in our review, because they provide a DOI and other aspects that satisfies the FAIR-RS principle. And optionally, we suggest to register the software on a registry to increase findability, such as bio.tools or the RRID portal. And some closing comments I can add. Well, I guess when we started this work, we were just talking, hey, we'll Google around, we'll find someone who said you do this to do your research software fair. And it turns out it wasn't the case, and kind of things escalated pretty quickly into kind of going into a very deep work that we hadn't anticipated. And so now we're hoping to get more community support. This could be because, hey, you like the guidelines as they are, and then you want to follow them when you develop your software, or you want to share those guidelines with others, but mainly if you don't think they're good enough or they can be improved, please provide feedback and suggestions. And I'm linking here to kind of the draft I showed you where I guess it would be most helpful to have your comments. And again, you can maybe think, hey, just another guidelines, there's so many already. Well, it'd be nice to see if this could be merged with something existing, or any way, again, this can be made more useful to the community. I've started a separate organization for that, so we can have others kind of take the lead on this if need be, if there are people more suitable out there to do this work. Again, our goal is really that we did this work kind of as the need arises, and now we're hoping that we can help at least people who want to make their research software fair as to start, while there's something more kind of heavily supported by the community or contributed that came across. And yeah, finally, some acknowledgement for our support from the NIAID, Sanjay, Zicheng, and Hervé, who have co-authored on this work, and many others who have provided great feedback. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. That was an excellent presentation with some really specific guidelines, which I love. Do folks have questions?
I don't have questions. I just have a comment that was fabulous. So I really love those guidelines. They're very actionable, very easy to read and to understand. That's just wonderful to see.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Moran, do you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to get the hand, but yes, thank you, Alice, for giving me the hand. Thank you, Bhavesh, for the presentation. Great effort to make the FAIR for Research Software principles, which are aspirational, something more concrete. I really like the effort, and I have some comments because there's some things missing. How do you take improvements or comments, or do you wish for us to provide it with tickets, or how do you see it coming into the community to get the community feedback?
Sorry. Yeah, I think if you go on I think there's several ways. If you go on the page here, I provide some instructions. Sorry. If you go on the guidelines repository, and I can drop that maybe in the chat. I have some instructions on contribution. You can either open an issue, if that's simple, or you can fork the repository and make suggestions. You can make suggestion on the main folder that's here, but that's a copy of the latest version. I would suggest to make your comments on the main folder on the staging branch. And so that's the draft 2.0 I was showing, because it has evolved a lot since the last kind of released version. So if you go on the draft 2.0 link or to the staging branch, you can kind of edit that and submit a pull request, for instance, or again, GitHub issues if that's easier, or email, I guess, anything that's convenient for you.
It's not easy. Then you need to answer emails. But yes, issues are a good way to start, and then maybe a PR if we have time. Yes, I will definitely do that.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Could you drop the link into the chat, please?
Yes.
That would be very helpful.
Awesome. Any last questions? Thank you again so much for the presentation.